What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of T-Dub's Film Room, brought to you by thebarnauburn.com. We are back for another commit breakdown video, this time a guy who will become the highest rated signee at his position all time for Auburn football. Let's get right to it. All right, here we go. Bralan Womack, 6'1", 200 pounds, out of Hartfield Academy, Brandon, Mississippi. 5-star industry rated player. Again, the highest rated, not only safety, highest rated defensive back that Auburn will have ever signed. Number 21 player nationally. Number 3 overall safety, even though he's the first ranked safety on Rivals and 247. So I don't know how that kind of works. But number 2 player in the state of Mississippi industry. Jace Matthews, Tristan Keys, guys like that obviously in there as well. But so obviously huge pedigree, 5-star player, legit. Let's take a look at the film and see what we got. Quick note here, obviously beating Ohio State. Really, Ohio State and Florida were probably the top 2 teams that Auburn beat out here. A&M was in, and then, Ole Miss being the in-state school as well. But let's take a look at the film. All right, here we go. So we're jumping in about halfway through just because the first few plays, and we'll go back and watch, were him playing offense, actually. So here's him playing his position, safety, last level of defense there, third level of defense, picking it off, making it look easy, taking it back to the house. Okay, so just looking at what he looks like moving around on the field, all right, I see a fluidity, all right, to his movement and how that translates to like his position. So you see him getting the feet in bounds, that kind of thing. Fluidity, length. I personally see him as a player. Look at the ball skills there, and we'll see a lot more of that. I see him as a player who is a versatile piece for the defensive back room. I think he could play corner. I think he could play nickel. I think he could play box safety. I think he could play free field, single high safety, free safety, and just do his own thing, read the quarterback, and go pick off a bunch of balls. That kick return is a good one to look at again. What he does here, all right, in the return game with the ball in his hands, this will extrapolate to the next level in terms of whether he helps Auburn out in the return game as a punt returner, kick returner, or not. But he is going to get interceptions, and he is going to try to score when he gets interceptions. I realize that's like, okay, yeah, why wouldn't you do that? If you're a safety, you watch this here. He just has a natural fluidity, agility, change of direction, vision while running. Like, watch this here, okay? Obviously, he's just slowing down, kind of letting that build. That slight little okey doke here with this guy's like flying up, and he just sees him at the last minute, makes the last minute move. All right, little, shoulder check, spin move. He's the guy who you can't really explain why, but like, watch this play right here. The ball finds him, and then he has an uncanny ability to just put the ball in the end zone. Like, it's almost unquantifiable. And you think about, obviously I love comps. That's a pretty good job showing some tackling. We'll talk about that in a second too. So here he is. All right. There are guys, and we'll talk about comps, that, for whatever reason, it just seems like they are around the ball. We talked about Anquan Fagans, new boy Fagans, last year's cycle, a similar type of vibe as a safety. The ball finds him, and he just makes plays. All right. Obviously, this shows up in high school on offense. He's scoring touchdowns and making a bunch of plays. You think about guys in the past that have been defensive backs and safeties who have just always made plays, whether it be on special teams in the return game, but also interceptions, fumble recoveries for touchdowns, and finishing plays. You think about guys like Eric Berry and Tyrann Mathieu, and, there's a lot more, and I'll get to my comp in a second, but that's who I think he is. I don't see him as a player. And again, we're back to the beginning now, watching some offensive highlights. Here's a jet sweep where he completely reverses field, so that'll be fun to watch. I don't think he's a safety who's one of these guys who, his best attribute is his open field tackling and his physicality overall. I've seen some comps for him for like Caleb Downs. He wears number 2. He's a 5-star safety, high potential that he comes in as a freshman and makes an immediate impact. I don't see that as much because if you go and watch Caleb Downs' highlights, especially last year at Ohio State, a lot of his best plays are him just screaming, through the alley or into the flat from a safety position and making a fantastic open field tackle or a big hit on somebody. I think that Bralan Womack, a lot of this highlight tape, it just doesn't show a lot of his physical tenacity as a tackler. It just doesn't show it. I'm not saying he doesn't have it, but I think his best attribute and why he's such an intriguing player and a 5-star is what he does as a defender, reading the offense, diagnosing what's happening, making a play on the ball, having the ball skills to catch the ball, and then having the athleticism and just the football playerness to, I just picked this ball off, I'm going to go score. I just got this fumble recovery, I'm going to go score. I bet he's going to punch balls out and rip balls out quite often as well. I think he is going to be a stat stuffer, not necessarily for tackles for loss, but interceptions, fumble recoveries, fumbles forced, and then interception and return, fumble return yardage and touchdowns. That's who I think that this guy is. And those guys are very valuable because, again, you just don't think of guys like that. A lot of times guys end up playing defensive back because they don't have the requisite ball skills to play on offense, right? So we've seen the entire highlight tape now. Obviously, he's a special player. A lot of elite traits, and I think he's pretty much good at everything. But let's get to the player comp because I think that'll allow me to kind of dive deeper into where I see him fitting in Auburn's secondary. All right, so hear me out. I believe I comped New Boy Fagans to Eddie Jackson in last year's cycle. All right, and again, I think there are a lot of similarities of who New Boy Fagans is as a ball hawk safety, a turnover generator. Eddie Jackson was that at Alabama, okay? He wasn't as highly, rated as a recruit. He was a 4-star recruit out of Florida. He was a 4th-round draft pick, but was a really good player for the Bears, definitely for a few years. I'm going to pull up some highlights in a second, but this is the point that really I'm making. There's 2 things. One, Eddie Jackson's true freshman year at Alabama, he started 4 games at corner. All right, he played some corner his sophomore year as well, transitioned to safety full-time his last 2 years. And his junior year, and that's probably the year that you remember, if you remember Eddie Jackson playing at Alabama, 6 interceptions, 38 yards average on the 6 interceptions, meaning when he got an interception, he averaged almost 40 yards every time he got an interception. He had 2 interception touchdowns, all right? He had a fumble recovery, and he had a forced fumble. And you can see, he is stuffing the stats on turnover generation. This is who I think Bralan Womack will develop into being, is a guy like this where he is turning over the offense. He's getting his hands on the ball. Eddie Jackson also helped out in the return game. All right, let's rewind some of this here. But, you can see this. And look, their body types are similar. 6 foot, 200 pounds is Eddie Jackson's playing weight. You can see they have similar, I would say length and not a lot of bulk or mass. I was mentioning some guys earlier like Eric Berry. Eric Berry had a kind of beefy upper body. Tyrann Mathieu, not built similarly to that. So I think body type, the fluidity, the athleticism, there's Eddie Jackson playing corner there, or at least he's rolling down off a corner blitz or something like that. I think he's playing corner. I think Bralan Womack could play anywhere in the secondary, and I think anywhere that he plays, he is going to first force turnovers. There's Eddie Jackson ripping the ball out, right? I think he's going to force turnovers. I think he could help us in the run game, or in the return game if we want. And I think he's going to take interceptions and fumbles and punt returns and kick returns, whatever he does. I think he's going to turn them into touchdowns. A completely immeasurable, invaluable asset to have a guy like this in your secondary. If you recall, this season where Eddie Jackson had 6 picks and 2 return for a touchdown, I believe, their defense had a million, defensive touchdowns. This is what Bralan Womack brings to your defense, to your secondary, in my opinion. He may not be the downhill, fit in the alley, huge hits on guys, that kind of stuff. He may not be that player. We have guys like that. Caleb Harris will be there. Eric Winters. We'll see, who else kind of we bring in as well. I think he's going to be a formidable tackler, though. similar to Eddie. This is who I see Bralan Womack being, okay? Super excited about the pickup. Super excited for Auburn's momentum kind of ending here. Fall camp heading into the season. You've got some absolute studs: Bralan Womack, Jace Matthews. You got a great future offensive tackle, Wilson Zaire, Jaquez Wilkes. These guys, the momentum Auburn has built here in the summer, I think is huge. So, just excited about this pickup and excited about kind of the progression here for Auburn. One more thing before we go. Just remember, guys, Roback, Barn20, promo code, 20% off. Look at this awesome new polo. Okay, if you're watching this, you're likely to be an Auburn fan. Pretty sick polo. All right, obviously there's a lot more here. Auburn stuff, non-Auburn stuff, plenty of stuff. Barn20, pop that in there, get 20% off your order. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.